The sign of Aries. What does Aries represent? It's interesting. The sign of Aries, according to the Greek mix, there was a ram, this ram up here, Aries. It first appears in the mythology just before the offering of a guy by the name of Phrixus as a human sacrifice. Now, according to the story, King Athamas had sought to ward off a famine by offering his son Phrixus of his first wife. His second wife convinced him that the King Zeus would consider nothing less than offering his son Phrixus. Now, obviously, that's mythology. That's not Bible. However, where does that fit in? Does that relate to anything? Remember when Abraham offered up his son Isaac? And just before God told him, offer your son, your only son, right, to me. Abraham was going to cut his throat and offer him as a burnt offering. And then an angel grabs his hand, stops him, and says, offer up the ram instead. This story is being echoed here with the signs in the heavens because the father was going to offer up his son Phrixus, and this ram, you also have maybe heard about the golden fleece. He's the ram with the golden. He flies down, Phrixus climbs on his back, he takes off, he saves Phrixus from being offered, and then when Phrixus lands with the ram on the ground, Phrixus takes the ram in his place and offers him as a sacrifice. So you can see the parallel there. In fact, this scripture is what we just looked at here. For because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thy only son. We've said on occasion as well, the reason God can offer his son is because Abraham was willing to offer his son. And God was his covenant partner, right? But I brought this up before. Remember, the fish were bound by this band. You can't hardly see it, but you can see the one fish's tail, Pisces. There's actually two fish. They're bound here. And here's a monster, the sea monster, Cetus. Remember, we said it's the ram who breaks the band and sets those fish free? And that ram represents Christ. We actually see the full picture here in the constellations. And you can see, here you can see the two fish Pisces. See when the ram, Aries, breaks the band, the fish are set free. Remember the scripture said, and the woman flees into the wilderness, and the child is caught up to God. You notice one fish is going straight up in the air, the other one's going out. That's like the woman Israel is running into the wilderness, while the other one represents the ones being raptured into heaven. The band which ties them to the monster. This monster has multi-heads as well, and he really represents the dragon, or the beast, which is also to come in Revelation chapter 13. But here he does represent the dragon, which we saw and we see in the scripture, and we spoke about spiritual warfare. Well, what does all this represent? Well, if we look at the Greek myths, this monster here represented Typhon, the fiercest monster of all, having 100 heads. Well, of course, the dragon only has 7 heads. But in the myth, it says it has 100 heads, each speaking a different tongue. According to the myth, this great monster had rushed toward Olympus to destroy the kingdom of heaven. None were able to overcome the monster except the promised seed that was to come. Here's the promised seed that was to come. If you're familiar with mythology, it's Perseus. And do you know what he has in his hand? He's got the head of Medusa. But literally, what the name of the star, or the name of that head, is not Medusa. That's in the myth. The name is Satan. In other words, he cut off the head of Satan. What I've done is I've moved down. I took out the rest of the stuff, and I just moved the woman. See, the woman is bound here in chains. That represents the bride, and who's bound to the monster. Here comes the hero, who is the Messiah, represent the Messiah. He comes with the head of Satan that he's cut off, and this is the beast, or the dragon, and he slays the dragon. You could also think like this: if this is Satan he takes his sword, chops off his head, and he's got his head in his hand. And again, the star there is literally Satan. And we actually see the scripture here in Psalm 74:14. It says, "Thou breakest the heads of Leviathan in pieces." That beast, that Leviathan that it's talking about in Psalm, was a representation. If you'll do a study on that, you'll find out Leviathan is a 7-headed dragon that he's talking about in the book of Psalms. Revelation 12:14 we've already read. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly in the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time, times and a half a time, from the face of the serpent. So she's set free from the serpent. We can read down the side here, Perseus. The Hebrew name is Peretz, meaning the breaker. The bright star in his left foot is named Athik, which means who breaks. In the Egyptian zodiac of Dendera, his name is Karknem, which means he who fights and subdues. He is without a doubt the promised Messiah who must come to subdue the creature Cetus. The star in his waist is called Merphak, which means who helps. He is the one who comes forth to assist the chained virgin Andromeda, who is about to be devoured by the great sea serpent. In his right shoulder is a star named El-Ganeb, which means who carries away, because he's going to carry her. Remember, she's carried off into heaven. He carries her away, for he shall carry away the virgin to a place of safety. All the while he holds in his left hand the head of Medusa. And if you check out the star, the meaning of the stars, you'll find out that head means literally Satan. This woman, that the next constellation that you see, it's a glorified woman who's now sits as a queen. Well, who is this? You'll find out if you study this that this is Cassiopeia, and she represents the same woman that was bound up in chains, which we call Andromeda. She's now saved, and she has a place on a throne next to Cepheus, which is the king who sits on the northern star. And we saw him last week. And look here down the side here. In fact, we have a scripture here. Behold, from Revelation 21:9. Behold, I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. And here she is, all glorious in heaven. If we read down the side here, both Cassiopeia and Andromeda are called by the same name within the Egyptian zodiac of Dendera, proving that both signs are intended to represent the same woman. The Arabic name is Rukaba, and the Chaldean name is Datal Kursa. Both names mean the enthroned. The figure is that of a beautiful woman who sits enthroned as a queen. Within her hand she holds a branch of victory or triumph. The star located in the top of her chair is named Kaf, which means the branch. If you look through your scriptures, you can see many references in the Old Testament prophetically where it talks about the branch. It represents the Messiah. And the ancients called her the daughter of splendor, from which she also got the nickname the glorified woman. In fact, the very name Cassiopeia means the beautiful enthroned.